They invited the girl everyone called the Ghost of Harlow and Reed to the firm's 10-year anniversary gala, just to watch her fail all over again. But she walked in as the new owner, and nobody in that building was ready for what happened next. Before the story begins, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. And when you reach the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. 10 years ago, Piper Callahan walked out of Harlow Reed Architecture carrying a cardboard box and one very bruised sense of self-worth. She was 23, 2 years out of college, and she had just been let go by the senior partner who told her, in front of the entire open floor plan, loud enough for the interns to hear, that she had no instincts for design, no future in the industry, and that the firm had done her a favor by hiring her at all. She didn't cry until she reached the sidewalk. Then she cried for approximately 4 city blocks, which was a personal record she had not been trying to set. Piper disappeared after that, not dramatically, not on purpose. She just quietly rebuilt herself somewhere else in a smaller city with a smaller firm doing work she loved without anyone watching. Nobody at Harlow Reed heard from her again. Nobody really looked, until now. Because Piper Callahan was back in Chicago and she had just signed the paperwork to acquire a 49% stake in Harlow Reed Architecture through the investment group she'd spent 7 years building from the ground up. The firm didn't know it yet. The senior partner who had humiliated her in front of 22 coworkers didn't know it yet. Nobody knew anything except Piper, her attorney, and the very expensive coffee she was currently failing to drink without spilling on herself. She was standing outside a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue, trying to manage a tote bag, a portfolio case, an umbrella that refused to collapse, and a 16-ounce oat latte, when the universe decided it was a good time to test her coordination. The umbrella won. The latte lost. And Piper stood on the sidewalk in a beige blazer with a large brown stain forming somewhere near her left shoulder, staring at the paper cup on the ground like it had personally betrayed her. "I trusted you," she said to the cup. The cup said nothing. "We had an agreement. I carry you. You stay upright." That was the whole deal. A man passing by gave her a look. She pointed at the cup. "It started it," she said. The man walked faster. Piper picked up the cup, dropped it in the trash, and turned to assess the damage. The blazer was salvageable. Maybe. She had exactly 4 hours before she was supposed to walk into the gala her acquisition team had quietly arranged invitations to, and she was currently standing on a public street arguing with disposable drinkware. This was fine. Everything was fine. She shifted the tote bag, repositioned the portfolio, accepted that the blazer was now a casualty of war, and turned back toward her hotel, which was when she walked directly into a man coming out of the coffee shop door, not gently. Not in the polite "excuse me so sorry" way of two strangers briefly occupying the same space. She walked into him fully, portfolio case first, and he caught her by the elbow before she could introduce herself to the pavement. "Whoa," he said. "I'm so sorry," she said to his chest. "Are you okay?" She looked up. He was tall, dark jacket, steady expression, the kind of face that looked like it was used to being looked at and had made peace with that. He was holding a coffee cup of his own, somehow miraculously undamaged. "I'm great," Piper said, straightening up. "This is just how I walk, very aggressively. I'm trying a new approach." He looked at her blazer. "Did that happen recently? About 3 minutes ago. My latte and I had a disagreement. Who won? The sidewalk." She pulled the tote bag back onto her shoulder with slightly too much force, which caused the portfolio to swing forward, which she caught with her knee, which was not a technique she could recommend. "I'm fine. I'm sorry I walked into you." "You didn't walk into me," he said, which was generous and clearly untrue. "You were redirected by the door." "The door," Piper repeated. "It opens outward. I should have checked." She looked at the door, which was still swinging gently back to its closed position, innocent and unhelpful. "Are you defending the door?" "It nearly took me out. I'm accepting partial responsibility on its behalf." Piper stared at him. "That is either very kind or very strange. I've been told both." The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, the suggestion of one. "Do you need somewhere to put that?" He was looking at the portfolio case, which she was still holding with her knee because she had not yet worked out a better system. She shifted it back to her hand with as much dignity as she could locate. "I'm good," she said. "I'm a professional." "Of what?" "Architecture." She paused, and apparently also of dropping things. He laughed at that, and it was a real laugh, the kind that didn't ask for anything back. Piper felt something shift slightly in her chest, which she ignored. "Good luck with the rest of your morning," he said. "Thank you. I'll try not to assault any more doors." She walked away with her stained blazer and her complicated feelings about the universe, telling herself she would never see that man again. She was wrong about that. The gala was in the Harlow and Reed main event space on the 14th floor, which Piper had helped design the mood board for during her second month at the firm before the senior partner had decided she had no instincts. The irony was not lost on her. She had stopped somewhere along Michigan Avenue and bought a different blazer. Dark green, more expensive than she'd planned, the kind of purchase you make when you need armor. And now she stood near the entrance holding a glass of sparkling water, watching the room fill up with people she used to watch from the junior desk in the corner. The firm had done well in 10 years. The space showed it. Everything was clean lines and warm light, the kind of design that whispered money without shouting it. Piper looked at the ceiling and recognized the vault detail she'd once sketched on a napkin during a lunch break she wasn't technically supposed to take. Nobody had given her credit for that napkin. She was in the middle of a complicated conversation with herself about whether it was petty to still think about the napkin when someone appeared at her left shoulder. "Piper," she turned. The woman beside her was about 50, silver hair pinned severely, a glass of red wine, an expression like she'd just found something mildly distasteful on the bottom of her shoe. Gretchen Harlow, senior partner. The one who had spoken those words 10 years ago in front of 22 people. "Gretchen," Piper said, "I didn't know you were on the invitation list." Gretchen's voice was perfectly pleasant in the way that had nothing to do with pleasure. "It was a last-minute addition," Piper said, which was technically true. "Are you with one of the contractor firms?" There it was, still. After 10 years in a room full of people, the instinct to put Piper somewhere small. "Not exactly," Piper said. Gretchen waited for her to explain. Piper smiled and said nothing else, which was something she had spent years learning how to do. Gretchen moved on. Piper exhaled. She drifted toward the windows, looking out at the city she'd left and come back to, trying to decide what she was feeling. Triumphant, maybe. A little sad, the kind of complicated that doesn't have a clean name. "You're doing it again." She turned. It was him, the man from the sidewalk. Dark jacket, same steady expression, a drink in his hand that he was actually managing to hold without incident. He looked at her like he'd already decided she was interesting and was prepared to be proven right. "Doing what?" Piper asked. "Thinking very loudly," he said. "You had the same look outside the coffee shop." "I wasn't thinking loudly. I was thinking quietly about loud things." "Is there a difference?" "There are several differences." She turned back to the window. "I'm surprised you're here. I could say the same." He stopped beside her, following her gaze out over the city. "Do you know the firm well?" "I used to work here," Piper said. "A long time ago. Good memories?" She paused. "Some." He didn't push. That was the thing she noticed right away. He had a quality of stillness, of waiting without pressing that most people didn't have. She found it slightly unnerving and also, against her better judgment, a relief. "I'm Piper," she said. "Garrett," he said. "Garrett Walsh." They shook hands. His grip was steady, unhurried. Piper had attended enough industry events to know when someone was performing confidence and when they actually had it. This was the real thing. "Are you in architecture?" she asked. "Adjacent," he said. "Development." She tilted her head. "Which side of development?" "The acquisition side." The word landed quietly between them. Piper looked at him and something shifted in her chest again, a little more insistently this time. She had spent enough time in rooms full of acquisition people to recognize the profile. Calm. Comfortable with silence. Carrying information they weren't yet sharing. "Small world," she said. "Getting smaller," he agreed. Across the room she could see Gretchen moving between clusters of guests with her wine glass and her careful smile. A younger man orbited her, sharp suit, too much gel in his hair, the energy of someone who believed this was his room and resented anyone who hadn't confirmed it. Piper didn't know him, which meant he'd joined after she left. "Who's the man near the bar?" she asked Garrett. He followed her gaze. "Donovan Harlow, Gretchen's nephew. He was made junior partner 2 years ago. Is he good?" Garrett considered this the way someone considers a question they've already answered privately. "He's good at the parts of the job that happen in rooms like this one. And the other parts? Less so." Piper looked back out the window. The city was all lit up and indifferent, the way cities were. She had missed it and not missed it in equal measure. "Why did you leave?" Garrett asked. She glanced at him. He was still looking at the city. "Someone told me I didn't belong here," she said. He turned to look at her then. Not with pity, she would have hated that, but with the particular attention of someone who heard exactly what she'd said and was deciding what to do with it. "Did you believe them?" he asked. "For about a year," Piper said. "Then I stopped." He nodded. Something in his expression softened very slightly, in a way that seemed accidental. "Good," he said. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her attorney. Call me when you can. Paperwork finalized. Everything's done. She stared at the words for a moment, then put the phone back in her bag. Is everything all right? Garrett asked. Everything is very all right, she said. I just need a minute. He gave it to her, which she hadn't expected. They stood at the window and let the room happen around them, and Piper thought, not for the first time, that she had been underestimating this evening. In a private corner of the event space, Donovan Harlow was having a conversation he thought was private. His voice carried farther than he realized, and Piper, standing near the floral arrangement that was absolutely not a hiding spot, heard most of it. The acquisition group is sending a representative tonight, Donovan said to the man beside him. Piper recognized the second man as the firm's financial director, a nervous sort with a habit of checking his watch. I want to know who it is before anything gets announced. We still don't know, the financial director said. Gretchen's being cagey about it, talking about it like it's good news. Donovan's voice went flat. It's not good news. Somebody buying into this firm is not good news. You don't think it could be positive for? I think, Donovan said, that whoever it is, they don't know what they're walking into. This firm runs a certain way. It has for 30 years. New money doesn't change that. Piper straightened the strap of her tote bag and walked calmly back into the room. She found a quiet corner and called her attorney. It's done, she said. Signed, filed, and delivered, her attorney said. 49%. Effective as of this morning. Piper looked across the room at Donovan Harlow, who was adjusting his cuffs and looking like a man confident in his position. Good, she said. Thank you. She hung up. She found another glass of sparkling water. She was considering whether she needed to do anything else dramatic for the evening when Garrett appeared again, this time with a small plate of appetizers he offered without commentary. She took one. It was a miniature crab cake, very good. You disappeared, he said. I was communing with a floral arrangement. He looked at her, and there was something careful in his expression now, something that hadn't been there before, like he was recalibrating. Piper, he said, and then stopped. She waited. I work for Ashbury Capital, he said. That's the investment group that acquired the stake, she finished. Silence. You knew, he said. I'm the acquisition, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. She held the crab cake and met his gaze and did not look away. You're Piper Callahan, he said. Not a question. I've been Piper Callahan the whole time, she said. I just didn't mention the last name, Callahan Development, he said. That's yours. For 7 years, he exhaled. Something moved across his face, surprise, respect, and something else she couldn't fully read. You came back to buy the firm that fired you. I came back to invest in a firm with strong bones and a management structure that needs updating, she said carefully. The personal history is incidental, is it? She paused. Mostly. He looked like he might laugh, but he didn't quite. I've been trying to identify the Callahan acquisition contact for 3 weeks. Nobody would tell me who it was. My attorney is very good at her job. She is. He shook his head, and this time he did smile, the full version which was considerably more disruptive to her concentration than the almost smile had been. I have been sitting across the table from Ashbury Capital people for a month trying to understand the principal's intentions. The principal spent this whole evening talking to me about a door. The door was relevant, Piper said. It was an omen. Of what? She looked at Gretchen across the room. Looked at Donovan. Looked at the ceiling vault she had sketched on a napkin 10 years ago. Of the evening going differently than people expected, she said. The announcement came at 9 o'clock. Gretchen stood at the front of the room with a microphone and a careful smile, and told the assembled guests that in addition to celebrating 10 years, they were pleased to announce a new investment partnership with Callahan Development, which had acquired a significant stake in Harlow & Reed with an interest in the firm's continued growth and a vision for its next chapter. The room processed this information with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Donovan Harlow's face went through approximately 6 distinct stages of emotion in 4 seconds. Piper, from her position near the windows, counted them. Stage 1, polite attention. Stage 2, confusion. Stage 3, the beginning of alarm. Stage 4, the search for who Callahan Development was. Stage 5, his eyes landing on Piper. Stage 6, a very specific expression that she recognized because she had worn it herself once in this same building 10 years ago. She held his gaze and did not look away. Gretchen caught her eye across the room and nodded, one short nod, and Piper understood from that nod that Gretchen had known exactly who was coming and had let it happen anyway. She would have questions about that later. For now, she nodded back. Donovan appeared at her elbow within 3 minutes. You're the Callahan acquisition, he said. Good evening, Piper said. You used to work here. His voice was doing something complicated, trying to find the right register and not finding it. Entry level. Before my time. Junior associate, she said. For 2 years, and now you've bought into the firm. Invested in, she said. 49% is a partnership, not a takeover. He was quiet for a moment, processing. She could see him deciding which way to take this, which version of himself to be. The room was watching. Not obviously, not rudely, but the way rooms watch when something interesting has happened. I have some questions, Donovan said, about the acquisition terms. Of course, Piper said. I'd be happy to schedule time with your team next week. My office will reach out. I'd like to talk tonight. I know, she said pleasantly. But tonight is a party. Questions about acquisition terms are Monday conversations. She watched him decide whether to push it. He looked at her, at the room, at his own reflection in the window behind her. He didn't push it. Of course, he said finally. Congratulations on the partnership. Thank you, she said. The firm has excellent bones. He walked away. Piper let out the breath she had been holding, slowly, so that nobody would see it. Garrett materialized beside her. Stage 6 was the best one, he said quietly. You were counting too? I started at 4, he admitted. What was 4? The beginning of alarm. That tracks. He handed her a glass of water, which she accepted because her hands needed something to do. How are you? It was such a simple question. Nobody had asked it all evening. Honestly, she said. I feel strange. Good strange, but strange. That makes sense. He stood beside her the way he'd stood at the window, steady and unhurried, not requiring anything from her. Did it go the way you expected? I expected to feel more triumphant, she said. I spent a lot of time imagining this evening and how it would feel. And it doesn't feel like the version I imagined. What does it feel like? Piper looked at the room. At the ceiling she recognized. At the junior desks visible through the glass partition where she had once sat. At the people still processing the announcement. At Gretchen moving through them with her careful smile. Like closing a window, she said. Not a door, more like a window. The air was coming in sideways and now it's not. Garrett was quiet for a moment. That's a very specific architectural metaphor. I'm a very specific architect. He looked at her, and there was something in his face that she didn't know how to catalog. Warm, careful, interested in a way that was trying not to declare itself. The door this morning, he said. Yes, it opened outward. She looked at him. What does that mean? I don't know yet, he said. I'm still working it out. Piper opened her mouth, closed it, and then laughed. A real one. The kind she didn't have to arrange. He smiled back, and for a moment the room was just the room, and they were just two people standing in it. I'm going to need to leave soon, she said. I have calls tomorrow, and my attorney wants a full debrief. Of course, he was quiet for a beat. Piper, yes? Would you like to have coffee sometime? Without the ambient chaos. She looked at him. At the steady expression, the careful warmth, the particular quality of stillness that she had catalogued all evening. Are you going to be able to handle coffee without incident? She asked. I'll take full responsibility for the door. That is not an answer. It's a commitment, he said. Those are better. Her phone buzzed again, her attorney. She looked at the message, then at Garrett, then at the room that had started this whole complicated evening with her stained blazer and her dropped latte and her 10-year-old grief about a napkin nobody credited. Monday, she said, after the acquisition calls. I'll have my assistant send you a time. My assistant will be ready, he said. She shook her head, smiling before she could stop it, and walked toward the exit. The elevator doors opened on the first try, smooth and silent, which felt like the building being polite. Piper stepped inside. Caught her reflection in the brushed steel panel, dark green blazer, chin slightly lifted, the look of someone who had walked into a room as a ghost and walked out as something else. She had thought about this evening for years, had imagined it in detail, revised it, let it go, picked it back up. The version in her head had always ended with something clear and complete. The feeling of a locked room finally opened. This felt different. It felt like a beginning, which she hadn't planned for. The elevator opened on the lobby. She walked out. The revolving door at the building's main entrance was one of those heavy old ones, the kind that needed a real push to get started. Piper approached it and pressed. Nothing. She pushed again. The thing groaned and held. Are you serious? She said. She pushed harder. The door rotated exactly 3 inches and stopped. A security guard looked up from his desk. It sticks sometimes. You've got to push it from the lower bar, not the middle. Piper looked at the lower bar, pushed. The door swept open with sudden generosity, releasing her onto the Chicago night, cool air and streetlights and the sound of the city doing exactly what the city does. She stood on the sidewalk and looked up. All right, she said to no one in particular. We're doing this. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I realize I should have asked for your number through a more formal channel. GW. She looked at it for a moment. typed, "This is a less formal channel. I'll allow it." His reply came immediately, "How is the sidewalk treating you?" She looked down. She was still standing completely upright. Nothing spilled, nothing dropped, no incidents. "Surprisingly well," she wrote back. "Don't tell the universe." She started walking, heels on the sidewalk, her portfolio under one arm, the night air doing what night air in Chicago does in early fall, cold and certain and clean. She thought about the room she'd just left, about Garrett Walsh and his careful warmth and his promise to take responsibility for a door, about Gretchen's one short nod, about the ceiling vault that had started on a napkin she'd drawn during a stolen lunch break when she was 23 and frightened and hadn't known yet what she was capable of. She knew now. 3 months later, the firm's first major project under the new partnership direction was greenlit. A community arts center on the west side, the kind of building Piper had always wanted to design and Harlow and Reed had always considered too small to bother with. The team was new, half of them people Piper had brought from her own firm, and they were very good. Donovan had come around. Not all the way, not quickly, but eventually, and the eventually had mattered, because eventually meant it was real. He was good at the parts of the job that happened in rooms, and Piper had decided that was actually valuable when it was pointed in the right direction. Gretchen, it turned out, had been waiting for someone to come in and fight for exactly the things Piper was fighting for. They had coffee every Thursday. The first time, Piper had asked her why she'd stayed quiet 10 years ago, when the things that needed saying weren't being said. Gretchen had set down her cup and looked at her for a long moment. "I was wrong," Gretchen said. "I've known it for a while." Piper had looked at her coffee and thought about what she wanted to say. "I know," she said finally. "Thank you for saying it. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to close the window." On a Tuesday in November, Piper was in the firm's kitchen attempting to operate a new espresso machine that the office manager had installed without providing any documentation when Garrett walked in. "Don't," he said immediately. "It has 9 buttons, Piper said. "Why does a coffee machine have 9 buttons? What is button 7? "That is the steam wand." "I would step back from button 7, Dop. You work with the machine?" "I have previous interactions with this specific machine, yes." He stepped up beside her and pressed a specific sequence of buttons with the ease of someone who had done it before. The machine hummed, considered the request, and produced a very credible espresso. Piper stared at it. "You have a relationship with the kitchen appliances." "I have a working understanding," he said. "There's a difference. You sound like me," she said. "I've been told that before." She looked at him. He was already looking at her, in the way he'd looked at her since the first evening, like she was something he was still working out and didn't mind still working out. "Button 7, she said. "Still recommend against it, on principle, or from experience. From the incident of October 11th, he said. "Which I prefer not to revisit." Piper took the espresso. It was excellent. She held it with both hands, which was a system she'd learned from experience, and looked at this man who had walked out of a coffee shop door on the same morning she spilled her whole future onto a Chicago sidewalk. "I have a question," she said. "Okay, the morning we met. The door outside the coffee shop. Did you actually see it open outward before you came through?" He paused for exactly 1 beat too long. "Yes," he said. "Garrett, the timing was not ideal," he said. "You were clearly heading toward it, and I thought, if I came out at the right moment." "You could catch me," she said. "I could prevent the collision," he said carefully. "Garrett Walsh." She stared at him. "You orchestrated a sidewalk encounter." "I introduced a variable," he said. "It's different." She was quiet for a moment, holding her espresso, looking at the man who had been in on something she hadn't known was happening. Then she laughed. Really laughed, the way she'd laughed in the event space, the kind with no arrangement to it. "The door opened outward," she said. "It did. You took responsibility on its behalf. I maintain that was accurate," he said. "This," Piper said, pointing at him with her espresso cup in a way that was slightly dangerous but controlled, "is going in the story I tell at future events about how we met." "Is there going to be a future events version of this story?" he asked, and the warmth in his voice had shifted into something quieter, something that asked a real question. Piper looked at him. Looked at the espresso machine with its 9 inscrutable buttons. Looked at the kitchen where she'd spent so many mornings as a junior associate eating lunch alone, because she hadn't yet learned how to take up the right kind of space. She was learning. She had been learning for a long time. "Yes," she said, "I think there is." He smiled, the full version, and it did what it always did, which was make concentration generally unavailable. The espresso was perfect. The building was hers, partly, in the way that mattered. And the door, when she left the kitchen, opened on the very first try.